Some people say they wake up and couldn't move. That part is familiar. The weight, the pressure, that sense that something is in the room. But then the details change. The figure isn't a shadow. It's defined, standing near the bed. And instead of just watching, it feels like something is happening, like they're being observed, or examined, or taken somewhere without ever leaving the room. And when it's over, everything looks normal again, except for one thing. They don't describe it as a dream. They describe it as something that happened to them. Most people who experience sleep paralysis describe it in similar ways. You wake up, your body won't move, and your awareness is fully there. That part is consistent. The weight in your chest, the feeling that your breathing is shallow, that sense that something is in the room with you, even if you can't see it clearly. That's the baseline. That's what we can point to. That's where the explanation starts. But then there are the stories where the shape changes. The state is the same. The body is still. The awareness is active. The presence is there. But instead of something vague or something shadow-like, there's detail. There's structure. There's a form. And that's where the experience starts to move in a different direction. Because now it's not just something is here, it becomes something is here and it looks like this. And that changes how it lands. Because once something has a form, your brain stops treating it like a feeling and starts treating it like an object, something to track, something to react to, something that shouldn't be there. There's a version of this story that shows up a lot. Someone wakes up. They can't move. That part is immediate. The weight, the pressure, the awareness that something isn't quite right. And then they notice something near the bed. Not all the way across the room, not in the corner, closer. It's standing near them. And that detail matters because distance changes how it feels. Across the room is one thing. Near you is something else entirely. And it's not a shadow. It has a shape. Defined enough that their brain doesn't have to guess. Short. Thin. Proportions that don't feel familiar. And that's when the fear changes. Because it's not just a presence anymore. It feels like intention, like something is happening, not just around them, but to them. Some people describe the feeling of being observed, not casually, not like something just happens to be there, but like intention is directed at them, focused, locked in. And you can feel the difference in that shift from something exists to something is aware of me. That's a different type of tension. You feel it in your chest, in your hands, that instinct to move, to break the moment, even when you can't. Others describe something more physical, a sensation. Not always a painful sensation, but definitely invasive. Like their body isn't entirely their own in that moment. As if control is partially disconnected. And even if nothing visible is happening, that sensation alone is enough to make it feel very real. And then there are the stories that go even further, where the room itself starts to feel less stable. Not visually, but in perception. Like space shifts. Like distances don't feel the same. Like they're still in the room, but something about it doesn't feel anchored the same way it usually does. Like the environment is there, but it's not fully locked into place. And that's where things get harder to describe, because it's not just what they see, it's how everything feels. And this is where language starts to stretch, because what people describe doesn't always fit cleanly into words. They'll say things like, "It felt like I was somewhere else," or "It felt like I left the room without actually moving." And hearing that, you can feel how hard it is to explain something like that, because it doesn't line up with how we usually experience space. And again, we stay grounded here. This is a known state. The body is immobilized. The brain is active. Perception can shift. That's real. That part is documented. But the details, the consistency of those details is what makes people pause. Because the state is the same, but the shape is different. And that raises a question. If the brain is generating this, why does it generate such specific forms? Why do people describe similar figures, similar positions, similar interactions? Not identical, but close enough that it starts to feel like a pattern. And patterns, even when they don't prove anything, have a way of sticking with you. Because once you notice them, you don't really unnotice them. They just sit there in the background, waiting for you to look at it again. What do you make of this? Have you ever had what started out feeling like sleep paralysis turn even more vivid when instead of a shadow person, a shape formed, a defined shape that you could see? Let us know in the comments below. What are your thoughts? Drop us a line. The Midnight Drive, 402-610-2836. Once someone has an experience like that, they have to make sense of it. And that's where things start to split, because the experience itself is one thing, but the meaning attached to it depends on the person. Some people explain it neurologically, a state overlap, the brain partially dreaming while awake, creating something vivid enough to feel external. That's a grounded explanation. And for a lot of people, that's enough. It gives the experience a place to land, something to point to, something that doesn't follow them after it's over. Others experience the same thing and land somewhere different. They describe it as something spiritual, not just a brain state, but an encounter. And the language reflects that. You hear things like, "It felt like something evil was in the room," or "I had to call on Jesus just to get out of it." And those reactions aren't casual, they're immediate, instinctive, coming from a place that feels deeper than thought. Not something they decided, but something they felt. And then there are people who describe it in a completely different way. Not shadow, not dark, but something external, something not human. They describe beings, figures that don't look like anything they've seen before. And they use a different set of words. Observation, examination, contact. Language that shifts the experience from something internal to something happening to them. And what's interesting is that when you strip away the interpretation, the core experience doesn't change that much. The body is still. The awareness is active. There's a presence, something in the room, and a feeling that something is happening. Same structure, different meaning. And that's where it gets complicated, because it raises the question, is the experience shaping the interpretation? Or is the interpretation shaping the experience? Do people go through the same state and then assign meaning afterward? Or does what they believe shape what they see in the moment? And that's not easy to separate, because belief isn't just something we think, it's something we carry, something that sits under the surface and influences how we process things in real time. And once an experience like this happens, it doesn't just disappear. Even if it only lasts a few seconds, the memory of it sticks. Not always the details, but the feeling. That sense that something didn't line up. And people try to place it somewhere in a framework that makes some kind of sense. Neurological, psychological, spiritual, extraterrestrial. And each of those explanations has its own logic, its own language, its own way of holding something that doesn't fully resolve. There's also another layer to this. It overlaps with everything else that we've been talking about throughout the week. stress, sleep disruption, the body not fully resting. For me, these experiences didn't show up randomly. They showed up during seasons where everything felt tight, where sleep wasn't consistent, where my mind was carrying more than it had space for. And that doesn't just stay in your head. It settles into your body, your chest, your breathing. That low-level tension that never fully turns off. And there's a physical side to that too. Breathing, sleep quality. Even something as simple as whether your body is getting what it needs at night. And I've noticed, when those things are in place, when my body is actually resting, those experiences don't happen. And again, that doesn't explain everything, but it explains something. It shows that the state matters, that the condition of the body, the condition of the mind, plays a role of how the experience shows up. And maybe that's all it is. A very specific set of conditions creating a very specific kind of experience. That's possible. That's a clean explanation. And even with that, there's still that question. Why does it feel the way it does? Why does it feel like something else is there? Not just a dream, not just a thought, but something present, something aware. And maybe that feeling is part of the state itself. The brain creates a sense of presence along with the image that would make the most sense. It would line up with what we know, but it still leaves something open because the experience itself feels directed. Like something is happening with intention, and that's the part people have a hard time letting go of. By the time it ends, everything is back to normal. The room looks the same. Nothing there. Nothing to point to. And that makes it easy to explain. Easy to move past. But the experience itself doesn't always feel like something that came from inside. It feels like something that happened. And maybe that's just how the brain works in that state, creating something so vivid that it feels external. That's possible, but it doesn't fully explain why the same kind of experience keeps showing up across different people, different beliefs, different explanations, same structure, same presence, different meaning. And maybe that doesn't mean anything. Or maybe it's just one of those things that sits in that space between what we can explain and what we actually experience.